All right, y'all seniors, here's the deal. I said I would do one of these, so I'm going to do it, even though I'm not teaching TOK 2. I got bored on Friday, and I don't feel like doing my other work. So we're doing it. This is Mr. Carly, and I got my glasses on, which means TOK time. So here's what I got for you. I'm going to talk a little bit about the essay, and then I'm going to talk about prompt 1 and how I would give you some ideas. I'm not going to do a full thing like I normally would, but how I would answer it. So first off, this is the rubric that I use in my classes. I stole it from somebody, so I don't feel like you need to use this one. But it really breaks down into like 5 big things. So the first one is when you discuss the title or the question, are you maintaining your focus and are you actually answering the question? Seems pretty straightforward, but it can be difficult. And then are you linking it to the areas of knowledge, which means you're talking about the kind of the framework of that area of knowledge, what kind of knowledge it gives us, the procedures and the methods, the ethics in that field, some of the methodology of gaining knowledge in that field, those kinds of things. Your arguments have to have specific examples, which means you're going to have to use actual real life examples. It doesn't mean that you have to go look up a bunch of current news articles or journal articles or things like that, but you have to have something specific. Hopefully you've talked about a bunch of that in your classes, so you don't have to worry about that. You have to talk about different perspectives, so you should be taking multiple viewpoints on the prompt, and then implications of your argument should be considered, which means you should be thinking about why does this matter? Okay. Here's how I would set up a TOK essay. It's not the only way to do it, but I have this structure. If you'd like a copy of this, I am happy to give it to you. I just want to move myself over here for now. But in your intro, you want to talk about the key terms of the title or the prompt and how you interpret them, because there's always inherently multiple ways to interpret a essay prompt or TOK essay title. And then think about the scope of your essay plan. So talk about what areas of knowledge you're going to explore, how you're going to use them, what your big maybe thesis is. Even though this isn't really an art, it's not necessarily a persuasive essay. It is argumentative. You are going to be taking a stance on something and explaining things. So then the way that I tell people to do it, and it's not the only way to do it. In fact, I think I have it on this slideshow. Let me see how this slideshow explains things. Yeah, here it is. So again, that's a handout. Here's this thing though. This is helpful. Follow structure. So in the intro, unpack the prompt. And by that, I mean, talk about the terms, talk about what it's asking you to do, talk about things that need to be defined or the way you're defining them. That's what I call your framework. So you want to make sure that you talk about, if you're going to be using replicability as a term, how you're defining it, what areas of knowledge you're using. Not super long. Discussion 1. So I think about this as 2 different discussions. So you want to explain your first main point related to an area of knowledge. If you're really good, you can probably talk about multiple areas of knowledge within one discussion. So your discussion is centered on a theme or a main point. That's really awesome. Sometimes it's hard to do though. So you could just use your first discussion as the main points related to one area of knowledge, for example. Okay. So introduce your main ideas, explain your examples. I say you usually want to have 2 examples per discussion. It's not the requirement. There's not a required amount of examples, but you probably want to have 2 things that you talk about to support your main point. Link it to TOK concepts if you have some, certain things, specific things you've talked about in class. Common ones are knowledge questions, shared versus personal knowledge, known and unknowns, the methodology of gaining knowledge, empiricism versus rationalism, different ethical schools of thought, things like that. But it should relate to your prompt, so make sure you got that going. Compare and contrast areas of knowledge if you can. That's always a good thing to do. Already make a link to how are we seeing this differently in different areas of knowledge. Any counterclaims or perspectives can go in that discussion as well. Again, you want to be talking about multiple perspectives on the prompt, so use a counter argument. That's the easiest way to do it. Discussion 2, you repeat the process with your second main point related to an area of knowledge. So again, it could be a second big theme and you talk about both areas of knowledge, or it could just be one area of knowledge where you talk about a couple different points. And then this is kind of optional, but a good way to identify implications is to challenge the prompt a little bit. So talk about other considerations or assumptions that you can challenge based on your analysis. So maybe there's a limitation to the prompt, or maybe there's a different way you can think about it that you didn't talk about yet. It's just kind of leaving the reader with something. So The conclusion, this is very important. Explain the main takeaways. What have you learned through this process? Indicate the significance, the implication. So like we started with this big, broad, crazy question, and now we want to break it down and talk about what did we learn? What did we take away? Just so it all wraps it all up nicely, because these are messy questions. They're very abstract questions. Some might say they're pretentious questions, but they want to see like what were the main points that you came away with from this. So again, intro, unpack the prompt, explain the prompt, build your framework. Don't talk about mankind's inevitable search for knowledge. That is really overdone and annoying. Don't do cliches. So here's a couple things. The suggested structure that I just did, you have two main discussion points, and you're going to focus on one of those on one AOK and another on the other AOK with some intermittent links. It's not the only way to do it. There's other ways that you can set up this essay. You may want to take a more conceptual or thematic approach like I was describing. You might want to do like, here's a big idea, and here's some different areas of knowledge that fit into it, and here's another one, and different areas of knowledge that fit into it. You may find you have 3 main points or maybe like 4 main points. Keep in mind, I think it's like 1,600 words, so be careful with how many words you're using. Do what works for you, but make sure it's make sure it's analytical, not descriptive. So you don't want to just be describing different events or different current news situations. You want to actually breaking it down and talking about, here's this situation, here's how it relates to theory of knowledge, here's how it relates to the prompt. Okay, this is how it's helping me get closer to an answer to the prompt. Common mistakes that I've seen people make, and really quick, I'm just going to check my time just so I can see how long I've taken. Oh, nice. We're like not even halfway. That's beautiful. Okay. Common mistakes I see people make when they do this. Mistake 1 is not answering or not showing you understand the prompt. That's why I say in the intro, unpack the prompt and explain, this is how I view it. This is how I'm going to talk about it and discuss it, because there's multiple ways to do this. Mistake being cliche or like not yourself. Don't be like, mankind has always had a thirst for knowledge. Okay, we're just do your intro, write in the way you would write. Talk about things that are specific, not vague platitudes. Using the intro, there it is. I forgot that I wrote that. There it is. Dictionary definition of terms. Don't say what the dictionary says the definition is. Use your own definition. It should be like based in reality. You can't just make up whatever you want. But unless you're Jacques Derrida, then you might be able to. You can look that one up. But don't talk about how Merriam-Webster defines something. Okay, just say this is how I'm using this word, this term. Overused ideas like history repeats itself. Art depends on the viewer. Think about what these sayings mean and how you can find deeper understanding in them. Don't do things that are surface level like that. Other common mistakes, being overly descriptive with examples or not situating them within the areas of knowledge. The bulk of your writing should be on the analysis of the example in relation to TOK and the prompt, not explaining the example. Just a couple sentences about the example and then explain how it relates. Okay, you don't have a lot of words to do this. You got to get in and get out like Kim Kardashian's marriage to Chris Humphries. Mistake 4, being vague and lacking nuance, which are like opposites, like being overly vague or saying things are like black and white. Okay, talk about there's always going to be some differences, some variation, some nuance in there. So absolutist language, like for example, a lot of people will say natural sciences has many different perspectives and sorry, that's not what I'm saying. An example would be that natural sciences does have many different perspectives and subdisciplines. So it's very vague and overly simplified to say natural sciences does this way. Okay. Theoretical physics is a lot different from classifying life forms in biology. Okay. Like there's a lot of nuance and differences. Make sure you're specific about which ones you're talking about. Same with human sciences. False dichotomy, okay? There's this old, I don't know where it comes from, but tyranny is the deliberate removal of all nuance. So things are not usually one way or the other. So don't say these people always do this discipline always does this. You want to talk about certain cases and examples. Tips so you're not left hanging. Follow structure, set this up in the introduction, and stick to it. Whoa, why does that get bigger? Okay. Oh, I always have kids do checkpoints, and I say do them to the best of your ability, complete them one at a time. Explain and signpost where the paragraph or section is going before jumping right into your examples. So sometimes when I read TOK essays, people will jump straight into the example and start explaining it. Like set up that paragraph, set up that discussion about what you feel like it's going to say and what you're trying to get out of it so that the reader knows where it's going. Just take a few sentences, situate it within the paragraph. Quality versus quantity, more depth with fewer examples. That's why I say 2 per area of knowledge is about all you're going to want to need, is better than like less analysis with many examples. Focus on specific aspects of areas of knowledge. They each have the following: a scope. So what knowledge is gained from this area of knowledge. Methods, how they develop and produce the knowledge. Perspectives, which are different views or schools of thought. And ethics, which are lenses that help guide the pursuit and sharing of knowledge. You don't have to go through all of those with every example you use, but it's very, very helpful to talk about that when you're talking about an area of knowledge. So hopefully you learned about those, because it's really, really important that you know how knowledge is developed in history, and you know how knowledge is developed in social sciences or human sciences, and what it means to have knowledge in math. Okay. And also like the ethical implications of those. Imagine, this is how I tell people, imagine your essay is a discussion between two people. I talk a lot in TOK about Plato. The other person is not necessarily going to refute everything that you say, but they may ask you, have you ever thought about it like this? Those are your counterclaims. It's not so much like this directly goes against what I'm saying. Is there something else I should consider related to that? Okay. That's it. Oh, here it is again. Notice you can still get a really good score by doing well on 4 of the 5 characteristics. So implications of arguments shows up in this like excellent 9 to 10, but you can still get a very good score as long as you're explaining how it relates to the prompt, linking it to areas of knowledge and other concepts, being clear and coherent, talking about different perspectives. Okay. I think that's it. Yeah. And then I went on, what else did I do? Oh, I was doing some examples. So this is from an old class that I did. So once again, I'm going to stop there. I'm going to probably do a video about how I would set up one of the titles, but I'm going to do title 1 at some point. But that is just an overview of like writing the essay and how to write the essay. Hopefully this was helpful, and you can do some good work. All right.